There, everyone. Okay, so today I want to continue talking about Matthew Hussey and his friendship with Ed Mylett, um, and just shedding some light on what the connections between people like this can tell us about the advice that they're giving us. And I want to spend a little bit of time debunking some of the advice that is given in this interview, which we started listening to last time, where Matthew Hussey is appearing on Ed Mylett's show, and they're talking about relationships and how this kind of relates to a person's purpose in life, and how people can be supposedly be more successful in both their romantic relationships and also in their kind of life purpose. And I just want to make it really clear that I am talking about these two men and the advice which they are putting out there into the world, not because of any kind of personal dislike of either one of them, um, or because I have any kind of desire to see the two of them fall or fail, or because I want to cancel them. I'm actually someone who's very much against cancel culture. But what I am very much for is opening up discussions and dialogue, and just analysis where we can just start to look a little bit more critically at the information that we're being asked to accept by people who claim to be experts. People who claim to be experts based on nothing more than a massive social media following and kind of the validation of other people who are just like them. And do these people really have anything valuable or useful to share with us, with ordinary individuals who are not in their position and whose lives may look very radically different from these people? And I think it's very important that we get into the habit of just analyzing and being skeptical and cautious of things that we hear, and not believing that um, someone actually has the keys to our success, via very kind of generic advice that they might be dishing out. It's very important that we become skeptical and critical of this sort of advice. And I, through the videos that I make, about topics like this and about people like this, I just want to kind of demonstrate how we can start to look critically at this information and at this advice. Now, although I said, I'm not here to cancel Matthew Hussey or Ed Mylett. I'm not a fan of either one of them. I don't like them. But I'm not here to start any sort of drama with either one of them. I would love to see audiences just becoming a lot more just critical, and just thinking a bit more deeply and a bit more skeptically about the things that people like this say. But having said that, I do think that it is very important to be aware of the kinds of people that we're talking about here. So Ed Mylett, as I mentioned in my last video, is very, very big in the MLM space, multi-level marketing, industry. Ed Mylett is a big name. He regularly gives talks at MLM conferences. He coaches people who are high up in MLM companies. He himself got his start in a very predatory and slimy MLM called WFG, World Financial Group, which is an insurance MLM. And there's actually a video on YouTube, which I might look at one day, where he actually just he discusses his manipulative sales tactics that he uses to help to con people into buying his MLM insurance products. And MLM, I mean, Ed Mylett continues his association with WFG to this day. He's still very much connected to multi-level marketing. I think any of us who've watched any anti-MLM content are well aware of how harmful MLMs are to the people who get involved in them. And so anyone who has any of these affiliations with MLMs is someone that I am immediately extremely skeptical of. I immediately take them with a massive dose of salt. And I have to say, Ed Mylett is someone that I have distrusted from the first word that I ever came out of, that ever heard come out of his mouth. Um, Matthew Hussey is a little bit more subtle in, the problems that we see with him. He's pretty much just your typical dating coach grifter type. He charges exorbitant amounts of money for his retreats, which are basically just kind of 5-day feel-good workshops. He has multiple kind of generic love life advice, coaching packages or courses, ebooks, that sort of thing on his website that you can purchase. But something that I've looked at in multiple videos is the fact that he seems to be running a credit card scam via his website. And so I would strongly advise anyone who is considering purchasing his products not to part with your credit card information, because we have looked at dozens, and there are actually hundreds and thousands of testimonials of people out there who have had money kind of fraudulently taken from their credit cards. And he seems to be running what is known as a continuity billing scam on his website, which is a subscription-based scam where they automatically bill you every month, even though you didn't realize that you signed up to be billed. So that's Matthew Hussey, and aside from the actual scamming that Matthew Hussey has done, um, Matthew Hussey is just someone who is just a very manipulative person in terms of his content. I'll often get people telling me that they have, obtained some value or some benefit from his advice. And if that's the case, that is great. And if you are able to see through a lot of the manipulative sales tactics and a lot of the kind of like the fakeness of it all, and you're still able to get benefit out of Matthew Hussey's content, then that's great. And I'm not here to knock your experience. I always say that people are free to, derive benefit from any information that they feel helps them. And if there's something about Matthew Hussey's presence that you feel kind of gives you some kind of benefit, then as I say, who am I to tell you not to listen to him? I would never do that. Um, but what I do want you to be aware of is this is a man whose every uh, waking moment when he is producing content is about getting you to part with as much money as possible. And virtually every bit of kind of good advice that he puts out there, good, bad, indifferent, it doesn't really matter. There's plenty of advice of his that I don't care for. Some of it is okay, some of it's like semi-decent. There's nothing mind-blowing in there, in my opinion. But whether it's good, bad, or indifferent advice, it's all his entire online presence is a funnel to get you to spend more and more money on his kind of empire of products. And that's something that I plan to demonstrate through the videos that I do about him on this channel. And I choose Matthew Hussey to focus on because he has over 3 million subscribers here on YouTube. He's got this kind of squeaky clean social media image. Virtually no one is criticizing him and exposing the scammy things that he's doing. Virtually no one is talking about his credit card scams. People are kind of only just too willing to be kind of drawn in by this man because he has a very good kind of PR image, and he's got a good PR thing going on. He obviously has people whom he consults with who help him to craft this persona and this image that we see on his videos, and when he's presenting his content and his advice. But I just want you to be aware of the fact that it is a show. It's an image. It's not real. And if you can develop the skills to just look beyond what these dating coaches are saying. You can avoid being taken in by them, as I was for many years. And I don't speak about any of this from a place of superiority. I was very much taken in by dating coaches for many years. And they really messed with my head quite significantly. And I just can't stand to see that happen to other people. I want people to be able to really question what they're hearing intelligently, no matter how charming or persuasive or good looking the person is who is presenting them with the information, no matter how good the marketing or PR is, no matter how subtle the sales tactics, I still want people to be able to sift through it for themselves and to see what's really going on. That is my aim and my passion with making these videos, is to get people to analyze and to question. And I think right off the bat, the fact that Matthew Hussey publicly aligns himself so closely with a character like Ed Mylett, and I may do a whole video on Ed Mylett as well, because I think he's not spoken about nearly enough either in terms of really what a scammer this man is. But the fact that Matthew Hussey aligns himself with someone like Ed Mylett should really tell you almost everything that you need to know about him and what he truly cares about. Um, but this interview that they do together is very revealing in the sense that they talk a lot about things that really give away their privilege as these two incredibly wealthy, powerful, white, heterosexual men, and how people like this manage to get to the top and then feel that they have the right to lecture to the rest of us about what we should be doing in order to succeed. And I just think I think it's really interesting. I think it's worth talking about. I think it's worth debunking. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy the rest of this discussion. When we left off with the podcast last time, Matthew was busy talking about how he started off as someone who coached one on one. And he would have 5 or 6 clients a day, and he realized he didn't really enjoy doing that. He far preferred talking to a group of people and getting his ideas out that way. Now, I think personally, and this may just be my own skeptical nature coming through, or my own skepticism of Matthew Hussey in general, but I find this really interesting. I think it's very telling. First of all, that a 21-year-old is with no qualifications as a coach, is in a position to be coaching 5 or 6 clients a day, who are actually coming to him for advice. I think that's extraordinary. But second of all, I think it's very telling that he openly admits that he would much rather stand and lecture to a group full of, like, to hundreds of people who are all paying to hear him talk, rather than helping people one on one. You know, he'd much rather rake in all the money from the entry fees that hundreds of people have paid and have a captive audience of people who don't really question him or challenge him in any way. He just gets to lecture to them like a priest delivering a sermon. I just think that's really telling. And I think, again, it says a lot about him. And I think it says something about how out of touch he is as well. By the way, you cannot hire Matthew Hussey as a personal dating coach one on one unless you are a celebrity, or like someone who is fabulously wealthy. It is not possible to hire him as your personal dating coach. The only way that you can get access to him in person is by attending his retreats and these occasional speaking events that he does. But even then, I think the chances of actually being able to ask him questions one on one are extremely low. Um, and so this is who we're dealing with. This is someone who likes to talk at length to a captive audience, and doesn't really engage much with people one on one unless they are celebrities. And I yeah. Anyway, that to me just also kind of it tells me a bit about him. It tells me a bit about what he has been in this for from the beginning. Um, so let's go over to the podcast. So that's where we were at with the podcast last time. Now let's just continue listening to what Matthew Hussey has to say about relationships and how we can find the perfect person for us.
Okay. Was born out of, I've got these 25 one-on-one clients. Let me see them once or twice or 3 times a month as a group. Instead of this one-to-one thing, which I'm not that great at because I don't have the patience for it. Right.
So there you have it, right from the horse's mouth. He admits that he doesn't have the patience to help people one-on-one. He'd rather lecture at people in a group. It's more lucrative to do that because, as I mentioned, you can collect fees from, 100 people instead of just the fees that one person is paying you. But I just think it's fascinating that he out and out admits he doesn't have the patience to do that. So if he doesn't have the patience to be a one-on-one coach, what makes anyone think that he has their best interests at heart? What makes anyone think that he has advice to share with you that is going to be useful in your specific situation if he can't even be bothered to have one-on-one conversations with his clients? And I think this is something we have to really ask ourselves when it comes to all of these coaches. They genuinely present themselves as these fountains of wisdom that have all this knowledge and truth to share with us that's supposedly going to be helpful, but they can't even be bothered to learn about the individual circumstances and facts of each person's life. This is all just stuff that they've come up with and pulled out of the ether, really. And half the time, they're not even living it themselves. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Right. Whereas get me in a room to talk ideas and to give strategy, and that's a different story. I come alive. So that was only not born out of me going, what should I do? Yeah. Answers are a reward for doing shit. I love that. Now, by the way, I got to tell everybody in my audience this. Because
I just also want you, like we spoke a little bit about this last time, but where Matthew Hussey says answers are a reward for doing shit. But how does that relate to what he has just told us about himself? He just basically went off of his own preferences. He preferred speaking to people in a room, in a group, in a room where they would all be listening to him, to working with clients one-on-one. Now, he had that luxury. Somehow, by some miracle, at the age of 21, he was able to have 25 full-time clients who were willing to pay him for his advice. And so I imagine he was doing reasonably well for himself at that stage. Other people are not in this kind of privileged position where they can afford to just drop what they're doing and just switch to doing something else with, no thought to the risk or the consequences. So it's all very well when people like Ed Mylett and Matthew Hussey, who are millionaires, give us this advice of, well, just do it and just, and the rest will come naturally. You'll have the answers if you just kind of just boldly take a risk. That's just not feasible for most people. And this is just something that really irks me when I hear it, this kind of advice.
We're talking about relationships, and I've been in the same one for a really long time. I want everyone to know that as I'm asking questions today, don't assume because I'm asking a question that I either it's an issue that I'm wondering about or it's an issue that I have a preconceived opinion about, one way or the other. But you said something earlier, and I have friends that say this to me, so let's just say I'm asking on their behalf, because I've been in a great relationship for a long time. But you said earlier that you may not have one calling in business. You may end up with multiple callings. And then that one person, I love what you said about there's more than just the one. However, you will build it with that one. They'll become the one over time. Sure. I have friends who say to me, in this day and age, we are not designed to be with one person for 50 or 60 or 80 years, right? Yeah. We've all got a friend that thinks that, or we've all thought that in the back of our mind. I'm curious, just you who have, coached in the relationship space forever, you're the number one person in the space, particularly as it relates to women. Do you have a belief about that? Do you believe that relationships can sustain loving and passionate dynamic with their ebbs and flows, and that we are cut out to be with one person over our entire lifetime? I know you didn't know I was going to ask you that, but I'm curious of what you think.
There's a wonderful Proust quote that goes, "The journey of discovery lies not in seeking new landscapes, but in seeing with fresh eyes." And it's possible, I believe. Some people find their new by constantly hunting for the next relationship and the next relationship and the next relationship. In other words, they're always looking for new landscapes. Other people either have this innate ability or learned ability to see their partner with new eyes.
Oh boy, wow.
And none of us are going to stay in the same relationship. You know, I've heard Esther Perel talk about, you know, we're all going to have many relationships over our lives. Some of us are going to have them with different people, others are going to have them with the same person.
Wonderful.
But
yes.
That changing our relationships is a guarantee, even if we're with one person, right?
That's brilliant, Matthew. I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to tell you, that's exactly the form.
Well, he didn't answer the question. Matthew really didn't answer the question, and I thought it was a good question. I would have been interested to know what Matthew Hussey actually thinks about this. Does he believe that monogamy is something that is, you know, humans are designed for? Is it something that is beneficial and desirable for us? Is that what we should be striving for? Is that what we're meant to be striving for? You know, are human beings monogamous, and why do so many people in this day and age seem to believe that we might not be monogamous? I would have liked to have heard Matthew Hussey actually answer this, and instead he kind of goes on a circuitous route by saying that you can either have multiple relationships with multiple different people, or you can have changes within your one relationship and keep kind of renewing and transforming the relationship with the person that you're already with. And he doesn't commit himself one way or the other. And I think that's interesting because at this stage, I just want to remind you, at this stage when this interview was done, Matthew Hussey was not married, he was not engaged, he'd never really had a serious relationship of any significant length. And he was kind of considered to be somewhat of a playboy in a way, which is interesting that, you know, he kind of saw himself as qualified to advise women about how to achieve kind of long-lasting, committed relationships for themselves. And so, yeah, I just think it's interesting that he hasn't kind of committed himself when it comes to answering this question.
The truth about sustaining a long-term relationship is that you're in new relationships with the same person.
Which, by the way, you should educate me on, because you're the pro there. Like you, how long have you been in your relationship?
Well, known one another 45 years out of 48 or 50, and dating it together. By the way, with breakups in there as well.
Yeah.
But to get 20, 30 years, long time between marriage and dating.
And
right?
so, how have you evolved over time to move into another phase, another chapter of the relationship, or new beginning in the relationship?
Both of you growing, obviously trying to grow together as well. But I will say to you, the times where the relationship hasn't been what we would both hope it would be is when that's not taking place. That's why I thought the answer was so brilliant. When it is the same relationship with the same conversations, the same thoughts, the same connection, is when that relationship, you have to be very careful. That's when people begin to say they've grown apart. But actually what typically happens is what you said, which is it's just the same relationship with the same conversations, the same energy all of the time.
I think that happens too, not just in romantic relationships. I think that happens in parent-child relationships. Brothers, I've got two brothers. And over time, I think the times we become disconnected from people we love is when we simply assume today we know them as well as we knew them yesterday. Instead of saying, this person, I'm changing, I'm growing, like my beliefs are changing.
I'm fascinated by this because this is someone who not, 5 minutes ago was talking about how they don't have the patience to listen to people one on one in order to help them as a coach. And yet, here he is telling us about the importance of having new and different conversations with the people in our lives all the time and continuously um, innovating our relationships so that we're always growing and changing together, and not to assume that our partner is the same person today as they were yesterday. I don't think this is bad advice. I think it is important to be continuously sensitive and receptive to the person that you're with, so that you're not allowing your relationship to become boring or static, and you're not making assumptions, but you're kind of opening yourself up to learning about your partner all the time. I do actually think that's great advice. But this is kind of a like do as I say, not as I do kind of a thing, because as I say, I don't necessarily see Matthew Hussey and Ed Mylett as being people who are particularly open to, growth and development, and, letting the input and feedback back of other people in, and changing their own views and their own ways of approaching things accordingly. I don't see that with either one of them. So it's just very interesting. Um, I always think it's fascinating when these coaches offer advice that like maybe sounds great in theory, and they know that there's a grain of truth in it, or that it might be good advice, but they themselves are completely incongruent with what they're saying. Um, and that's actually something we learn. I'm studying to be a therapist, and it's something that we learn is the importance, if you're actually trying to help people, it's the importance of being congruent. It's the importance of congruence between what you're saying and how you're presenting yourself externally and what's going on with you internally as a person, because you know your clients can tell the difference. They can definitely tell when something is off with what you're saying. And again, so as I say, if I just encourage you to look at this when you're thinking about taking advice from someone, or thinking about whether or not to trust what they say. Ask yourself, does this person seem to be congruent? Do they seem to be living out the advice that they're giving? Do they practice what they preach? Do they appear genuine and sincere about what they're saying? Does this person actually seem to care about me the way that they portray themselves as caring about me? Does this feel real to me? So just something to think about.
Changing about life, I'm developing. Why am I assuming that this person is, that's just my brother. That's who he is. I've known him since we were this high. I know my brother inside out. Do you? Because maybe if you haven't spoken even in 3 months properly, like we all speak, like many people,
Sure.
families live under the same roof, but they don't talk.
You're right.
There's a big difference.
Wow, it's so bright in here. I'm just going to close the blinds a little bit, because I have a feeling that I look as if I'm under a dark, glaring spotlight. It's a wee bit better.
And have I truly connected with who my brother, who my mother, who my child, who my best friend is today? And that comes from asking brave questions. We often don't like asking those questions because it threatens our sense of security to know that my girlfriend's changed, my boyfriend's different. There's a discomfort there because we want to, over time, if you imagine a relationship.
Speak for yourself, Matthew. I, um, I mean, yes, I suppose this can happen where, if our loved ones are changing, if our partner is changing, we sort of think, well, what does that say about the relationship? Are we still okay? Is the relationship still okay? If they're changing, are they going to change the way that they feel about me? It can create, I suppose, insecurity in some people. But I don't necessarily think that this should be the case in a healthy relationship. I'd like to think that if you're with the right person, there should be someone who is supportive of you, who respects you, who is not trying to constrain you, and who wants to see you grow and succeed and challenge yourself, and who is going to be right there with you, challenging you along the way. And again, I just like to caution you that if you are with someone who is kind of chronically insecure and is threatened by things that you do in order to, push yourself and grow, and ambitions that you have and goals that you have and ways in which you want to change and evolve as a person, that might not be the right person for you. Um, that is the kind of thing which it is it that is from my own experience, it is difficult to get over that. If someone truly has a hard time seeing you grow and evolve and develop as a person, can be difficult to overcome that. um Certainly that person needs to be kind of open to changing the way that they think, and that's not always easy to do. So just something to look out for when you are dating and choosing a partner. In my opinion, if you're someone who really cares about growing and evolving, and you're, always doing new things and challenging yourself, choose a person who is going to be very secure with that, who's going to respect and support that. Just my own kind of thoughts about that.
Relationship, we want to kind of get someone to a place where we feel completely safe with them.
Yes.
Let me get you out of that beautiful red dress I met you in and into your pajamas and in bed watching Netflix, and let's sit and have this, cozy. And of course, that's wonderful. There's a time and a place for that in a relationship, but we're often afraid of anything that would threaten what we know about someone, because what if that meant they were growing apart from us? What if that meant there was this distance?
I just can't shake this feeling when Matthew Hussey talks about this. I cannot shake this feeling that he's talking about himself, and that he's talking about how he views relationships. And this is often a sense that I get when I listen to his content, that when he talks about insecurities that supposedly all of us have, I often think he seems to be talking about himself. And I do wonder, is this how he feels about his partner when he gets into a relationship? Does he feel threatened that that person might be kind of evolving beyond his ability to keep their attention? And I don't know, I just can't shake the feeling that that's what he's talking about. Let me know if you also get that feeling.
That I'm uncomfortable with. Oh, I feel jealous. Oh, I feel like threatened. Oh, you're now into dancing. You've never been dancing before. You're doing these salsa classes. I can't dance. So what does this mean? Our partners, we have this need for them to stay, or this desire for them to stay comfortable. But again, Esther Perel would argue that's exactly.
Again, please speak for yourself, Matthew. um, you know, uh, I certainly don't think this is true for everyone, possibly not even most people. As I say, I'd like to think that in a healthy, good relationship, we are supportive of our partner's efforts to do things that, benefit them and that make them happy, and that, challenge them in the ways that they want to be challenged, and that help them to grow as people. Um, I really dislike it, and this is something Matthew Hussey does a lot, but a lot of these self-development coaches do this, is that they cast these blanket statements about problems that supposedly everybody has, and they're going to show you how to fix yourself. If you think this way, we're going to show you how to not think that way anymore. And you end up kind of almost second guessing yourself, and you're like, well, I don't think that's me, but Matthew Hussey says this is something that we all do. Maybe this is something that I need to fix in myself. Maybe I do need his book. Maybe I do need his course. And I just want to encourage you to see how he problematizes people. Um, I think it could be a bit of projection. I think he's, kind of thinking about things that he struggles with sometimes. But I also think sometimes he needs to create problems that aren't necessarily there, so that he can swoop in and provide the solution. Just my thoughts.
exactly what squashes desire within a relationship. Is that I've made so many efforts to make you cozy and comfortable that there's now no sense of enigma about you. And that's the sad part, actually, is that we do it to each other. Right. It's not that our partner doesn't remain enigmatic or have this natural inclination to grow. It's that we often, our insecurity, our fears, have a need to keep them known instead of allowing them to grow, which, even though it would make us uncomfortable at times, would actually allow the desire in the relationship to flourish.
Oh my God.
And perhaps the answer in relationships is just for us all to live a little, just a hair more dangerously.
You're right, my brother.
Than we are.
Brother, I've never heard that before.
Okay, I've said it before. I get really put off by all the little background noises that Ed is making the whole time Matthew is talking, kind of like psyching him up. It just seems really inauthentic to me. But I think there is kind of a bit of truth here in what Matthew Hussey is saying, in the sense that, yes, if you are someone who feels the need to try and control your partner and to make them fit into a small little box and to keep them kind of in a very comfortable, routine with you, so that they don't ever challenge you and so that you don't ever have to feel insecure in the relationship, then yes, I mean, don't be surprised if the passion in your relationship suffers. And if you suddenly don't kind of feel that same sense of excitement and desire in your relationship, that is, he is right about that to an extent, I think. If you are someone who struggles with that issue in your relationship. But I would argue that in our modern world, trying to fit a very kind of narrow interpretation of relationships into a kind of a modern life, and trying to have these very rigid expectations for our partners are possibly more to blame than the insecurity that he's talking about here. You know, I would love to hear Matthew speaking a little bit more broadly about this, instead of kind of saying, well, it's your fault because you're insecure, and so you're destroying your relationship with your insecurity. I kind of would like to hear Matthew expand his kind of definition of relationships a little bit, and sort of say to himself, okay, well, if you are someone who has this kind of desire to control your partner, and you want to keep them in this sort of rather small box, where is that actually coming from? And is there something that you could do in order to be growing and changing yourself? And so, and how could you reimagine your relationship in order to bring the excitement and the passion back, and so that you're both growing and evolving and changing together? Instead of making people feel bad for feeling insecure, why not present some kind of solutions in terms of encouraging people to be more imaginative in their relationships? And how can, like, I really believe, with all the freedoms and the advancements in our lives that we have now, our relationships should be kind of evolving with those freedoms and advancements. And, we have so much kind of leeway to imagine new kinds of relationships for ourselves, where we are able to kind of grow and evolve as people, whilst still having the person that we love kind of by our side. But, I don't think he goes far enough with this. He instead makes it a problem about the individual and kind of shames the individual, which is something I'm not a big fan of.
But having been in a long one and known when it's going great and when it was needed to do better, that idea, that desire to create safety of the known in your relationship, ironically, is the one thing that long-term can kill your relationship. Oh my goodness. That's, by the way, there's applications of that in business. There's applications of that in everything.
It's huge in business.
It's huge in business. And ask those questions you've said that do scare us, that do make us uncomfortable. You ever been, it's interesting, if you've been with somebody for a long time and then you're in an environment where you're around a new group of people. And I've watched this with my wife a few times where the one I know that's with me, then we're in a new group of people and I see her with their girlfriends or a different group. And there's this other person over there. I'm like, who in the heck is that person right there? And it does scare you a little bit, yet it's incredibly interesting and attractive too.
It's a huge aphrodisiac.
You make such a great point.
You see him over there interacting. And that, by the way, that is an important point you just made, is the perceiving.
I think this is a little weird. I mean, Matthew and Ed are both talking about like seeing their partner, you know, in a new kind of setting and seeing a different side to them coming out, and kind of saying how like it's an aphrodisiac and it's a really great thing to see and it's really exciting. And I think that's nice. You know, that's I'm glad that they feel that way, but whatever happened to just us having multiple sides to ourselves just for our own sake? Why does this have to be in service of our partner somehow? Why is the only reason that we have all these other sides to ourselves and these different interests and different friends and different things going on in our lives? Why is the only purpose of that to kind of keep our romantic relationships fresh and interesting? Why can we not be our own self-actualized individual people for our own sake? And I mean, I kind of feel if that were me and, you know, my partner saw a whole new side to me that he'd never seen before, and he thought that was really exciting and he was turned on by it and it was great. I mean, I would be like, yeah, I mean, that's great. I'm so glad, you know, but I'm not doing it for your benefits. And it's, you know, whether or not you see it as exciting and great for our relationship kind of is secondary to the fact that this is what makes me happy. I'm becoming the best version of myself for me and not for you, you know. And I really think it has to be driven by that. We have to be doing these things for ourselves, and not, you know, kind of with the thought in the back of our mind that my relationship is going to benefit from this, because that's unsustainable. Kind of makes me think back to when I did a video about Adrienne Everhart, and she was talking about the importance of keeping your life rich and full and juicy and having hobbies and self-care and interests that you do outside of your relationship, because it's going to make you more attractive to the man that you're with. And I said at the time, and it's something I really still believe very, very strongly, we shouldn't be doing all these other things just in order to be more attractive to our partner, because that's A, manipulative, B, unsustainable, and C, it's kind of betraying ourselves in a way. We need to be having our own rich and full and juicy lives, and I actually hate that word juicy, but you know, I'm just using Adrienne's word because I just spoke about her. But we should be having our own rich and fulfilling lives for ourselves, and because that's what makes us happy, that's what makes us feel satisfied as people, and because that's how we want to self-actualize, and because that's what we're passionate about. And if our partner, you know, gets some kind of side benefit from it in the form of being more attracted to us or more excited by us, well, that's great. Obviously, I'm not knocking that, but that's not a reason to grow and develop and self-actualize, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about that. But I know that I would never ever be able to sustain any kind of self-growth or any sort of hobby or anything that I might do unless it was for me. I would never be able to sustain it if I was doing it for the benefit of someone else or the benefit of a relationship. And that's just how I feel about that. And I kind of wish Matthew Hussey had added in that qualification, because I do find him a little bit condescending when he talks to his audience, and he forgets that really he should be talking about people as actual empowered, self-actualized individuals who are doing this really for their own benefit and their own happiness. And instead, I think unwittingly, Matthew Hussey frames people as only being kind of worthwhile and valuable, you know, in relationship to someone else, which, you know, I don't see it that way. But I find that's something a lot of these dating coaches do.
Being our partner from a distance. Because when you're in a group of people and you're talking, I get to perceive you from a distance. I get to look at how you interact over there. And there's something about that distance where you're not required to interact with your partner. You can just sit back and be an audience member. There's something about that. It's incredibly compelling. And I think we should almost give our partner that distance more, that audience more, where we can just, I just want to sit back, and that's what allows us to see with new eyes.
See, again, I think he's giving himself away here, where he's saying we should be giving our partner that distance a bit more. No, I mean, I don't agree. I think that distance is something which should be natural. It should be kind of inherent to your relationship. The space should be the natural consequence of you each having your own interests and things going on in your own lives. It shouldn't be something you artificially create in order to kind of generate more excitement. I think this is something Esther Perel talks about, and I think she talks about kind of generating more excitement and mystery in the relationship, and I don't agree with this. I think space is important in a relationship, yes, and it is important to have your own pursuits going on and your own life going on as an individual person, even while you're part of a relationship. But that should be natural. It should be authentic. It should come from the inside. It shouldn't come from someone else telling you that this is how you keep your relationship fun and exciting and interesting. That this is how you stop your partner from cheating, is by artificially creating distance between the two of you. No, you know, the distance and the space that happens should be completely authentic as a result of each of you doing what makes you happy as people. And when it's time to come together, then that's good too. That's also worthwhile, and that's also a source of happiness and satisfaction. But it should come, I strongly believe anyway, it should come from our own desires and feelings. It shouldn't be externally imposed upon us. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm explaining what I mean. But let me know what you guys think. I'm always interested to know what people's opinions about that are. But I really think the only way to create this kind of excitement sustainably is if it's authentic, is if it feels good and right and natural to the people involved, and if it's genuinely what makes them happy, and not because you're trying to create it artificially.
Again, let me just watch you being your person, your own independent person, away from me for a moment, and enjoy that.
Bro, unreal advice. Tremendous. Like, this is one of my favorite things we've ever covered on this show before. Yes, because it's such an area. This dynamic, these things we're discussing affect life is about connecting in relationships with humans. So whether that's in business or your interpersonal relationships or your dynamic with your children, as you've said, all of this stuff is brilliant to me. I don't even want to move off of it, but we have to talk about dating. It's been a long time since I've dated, and my pals that are now single again, or the young people who follow me, what the heck has technology done to dating? So for those that are out there that aren't in a relationship right now, the swipe left, swipe right culture.
How much of a boomer does Ed Mylett sound like when he talks like this? I can't believe that he's that out of touch with what dating is like nowadays. I mean, he has kids himself who are you know, around the age they'd be dating, I think. I just think it's so, like, he's like, what is this swipe right, swipe left? What's that all about?
We're in now, Instagram. I think I know what the upside of it is for a second, but how has it changed the dynamics of interacting with people beyond the obvious?
So you would say is when you say upside for you, it's we have the capability to meet many more people.
I look at it like that, yeah, that ability to reach people. But then I look back to when I was single, or or when friends of mine were single, and that idea of having to be vulnerable to take a risk to approach somebody,
Yeah.
and that you might potentially be rejected. The whole process was a little bit slower,
Yeah.
but it seemed to me to be potentially a deeper connection. I wonder, for
Well, I will say with online dating, I mean, the risk of rejection is, ever present in online dating as well. So it certainly hasn't taken away the risk of rejection. If anything, I would say you possibly experience rejection more when you're online dating because you're coming into contact with more people. Um, but I do get what he's saying about how perhaps the sense of courage and vulnerability to approach someone is maybe not the same when all you have to do is, send a text message via an online dating app or website. So, but I wouldn't say that online dating is any less kind of painful in terms of risk of rejection. It's ask anyone who's dated online for any length of time, and they'll tell you that it's like there's it exposes your vulnerabilities pretty quickly as well.
example, if this access to all of these people makes each interaction less important, less valuable, less deep, and that maybe we miss out on great people because we're in this, people can pursue us constantly on the other side. If I have a date with you and it's a great date, and before you'd get back and think about what a great date it was and look forward to the next one, now you're checking your DMs and you've got 85 other people who want to take you out again. So how is that?
Who has 85 people who want to take them out at any given time? Maybe Ed Mylett and Matthew Hussey because they're celebrities. I mean, maybe they're the ones getting this number of DMs. I don't think that's representative of normal people, though.
Affected the dating process, do you think?
I think you nailed it. I mean, there's a lot of life, I think, does actually follow the same principles.
Yeah.
There's breadth and there's depth. Mm-hmm. When we interact with someone on a dating level, what is it that makes us appreciate things? If I said to you, you're going to work for 10 years to buy your dream car, and the first time you ever bought your dream car, I said to you, on that very same day, you buy this brand new Ferrari, mm-hmm. and then I give you a Ferrari that is the exact same Ferrari, but I've just given it to you. And I say, which one do you want to, you can keep one of them, which one do you want to keep?
The one I've worked for 10 years, yeah. For sure, completely different.
Okay, but what on earth does that have to do with online dating? Is he trying to say that online dating has made things so easy that, whereas before you'd have to work up the courage to go and approach someone in person, and now because of online dating, you've just got hundreds or thousands of people at your fingertips, so it's so much easier. Is that where he's trying to go with that analogy? Because if so, I can only say that obviously he hasn't online dated much because it's definitely not just that easy just to have a great relationship just like that with online dating. I mean, anyone who has online dated for any length of time will tell you that. Yes, in theory, perhaps it should be because you do have access to a lot more people. But in practice, there are all kinds of other obstacles when you're dating online. And, creating and I suppose finding the right relationship is not necessarily any easier as a result of that. Or it's certainly not akin to someone just handing you the keys to a new Ferrari. I mean, again, like this again, it seems like kind of a privileged and out of touch thing to say. I do wonder to what extent he can actually relate to his clients who are in the real world online dating and to, have everyday experience of how difficult it is and of how hurtful it can be, and how, people can be dating online for years, and yes, they might be they might have access to a lot more people, and maybe potentially they're going on more dates. But a lot of those relationships are not working out because of the world that we live in. And creating actual lasting relationships, I don't think is necessarily any easier today than it was before online dating. Although I do think online dating is a net positive, I really do, because it at least allows us to have access to a greater variety of people. And although, there are things that you have to navigate when you're online dating, and you potentially have to toughen yourself up to things not working out a lot more than you might have if you just met people in real life, potentially. At the same time, it also gives us access to people that we would not have met otherwise. So I think it's a net positive, but I'm not really sure where Matthew Hussey's trying to go with this whole car analogy. So let's just listen to what he has to say.
It's the same car, but we value the things that we invest in. We value the things that we give time to. And it is an interesting thing in life when we're giving to something, even approaching someone, right? Most of us guys have been thankful that we don't have to do it every time we want to speak to someone these days.
Right.
You can actually just slide into someone's DMs. You can, there is a kind of, oh God, what a relief is I don't have to get out tonight, go over to that person, do this thing. But there was a special feeling that came from working up the courage to go over to someone. It went well, you exchange numbers, and now you feel like there's already this romance plot line that's building.
Yes.
And your mind is doing half the work.
There's a romance plotline building. What does he think online dating is? Oh gosh. I don't know. I mean, I just think I don't necessarily think online dating is any less romantic than doing it that way. I just think it's different. It's a different kind of experience. So those of you who still do go out to clubs and pubs and out at night where other single people are kind of out as well, and those of you who are either approaching people or being approached yourselves, let me know if this experience seems to you like a deep romance blooming any more so than online dating. But to me, when I think back on the days when I used to do this, it was just a different kind of experience. It was a lot of fun to either approach or be approached by someone, where there's potentially a bit of a romantic spark or a bit of an interest, a mutual interest in each other. But I don't think I ever thought of it as the beginning to some great love story. And again, I think you might be selling online dating a bit short here. I think in some ways, online dating can be just as romantic. You're both kind of already in that mindset where you're looking for something romantic, and you're wondering whether it will or won't work out. The thrill of a good first date is just as great. I think if you met someone online as if you kind of met them while you were out drunk at a bar or what have you. So I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. I again, I can't help thinking a lot of the time that Matthew Hussey kind of creates these kind of imaginary scenarios or problems that he can swoop in to give you the answers to solve, like, so he's already setting up online dating to be something which is inherently kind of flawed and problematic, so that he can come in with the book or the course to help you to know how to do it right. And that's what a lot of these dating coaches do. That's sort of their shtick, if you will. That's the grift. Make you feel as if you can't possibly get through it on your own, as if it's kind of hopelessly complicated and difficult, and as if you can't just have this perfect experience without their help. And so just be aware of that sort of manipulation as a thread kind of running through this sort of content. I've been talking for an hour now, and I'm trying to kind of keep my videos to around about an hour or less. Not to say that I won't still make very long style videos, because I definitely will. I enjoy doing longer style videos, but for this particular series, I'm trying to keep the videos to around an hour. And so I'm just going to, be making my way through this interview in separate parts. And that's great. I prefer to do it that way. I like talking about things in depth and in detail. So I'm not going to rush to do it all in one sitting. But that's where I'm going to just stop for today. Hope that you guys have enjoyed the discussion, and let me know what you think about any of these sort of topics that I have brought up in this video. As I say, I like to talk and analyze things, talk about things and analyze things in depth and in detail as the thoughts kind of come into my head. I don't script my videos generally. Actually, I've never scripted a video so far, so I just like to talk off the cuff. And I'll do another video just continuing to listen to this interview, hopefully in the not too distant future. So until then, take care of yourselves, everyone, and thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.